First tonight, as you may have heard, Nigeria has signed an agreement for another $23 million of stolen money to be returned by the United States. The money is part of assets hidden by the former military ruler Sani Abacha in foreign bank accounts. Up till now, between $500 and $600 million from hidden Abacha assets have been returned by the US, Switzerland and the island of Jersey, which is a financial centre for the UK. So what happens to these ill-gotten gains when they've returned to Nigeria? Well, someone who knows about this is Auwal Rafsanjani, Executive Director of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Centre, or CISLAC. They monitor how returned loot is spent, and Mr. Rafsanjani joins me now in the studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Rafsanjani, for coming in. What can you tell us about what's happened to all the Abacha money that has so far come back to Nigeria?
A lot of money have been recovered from Abacha and other, corrupt officials in Nigeria, both local asset and international asset. So during Obasanjo, a lot of recovery were done.
That's President Obasanjo's time, which was 1999 to 2007.
A lot of money, were recovered. The same thing also during Jonathan, and now during, President Muhammadu Buhari. But what is shocking is that when the first money came, we worked then together with the Minister of Finance, Kanjowala, to monitor the utilization of this money. We went to the field across the country where projects were said to be sited there. Incidentally, or surprisingly, many of those claims were not substantiated. We did not see any physical project cited like the way they've said it. This study and tour was actually supported by one of our partners, Richbold Foundation and World Bank. Team of civil society went to the field physically to observe all these claims, and we found out that those things were not even there. So as I speak to you now, there's no any available record of those recovery done during Obasanjo. You cannot go to anywhere and get those. And that records.
Money was in the neighborhood of $600 million.
The first one, there was 1.2 billion from the Swiss in 2002. There's also 149 million from JC Island. There's also another 500 million. There was another 458 million from the Swiss in 2005. That's from Obasanjo alone. And yet, you cannot actually go anywhere and find records available for those things. During Jonathan, we also recovered 1 billion from the Swiss in 2012, 380 million also again in 2015, and then again in 2014 also there was 48 million from the United States. No record whatsoever is available that you can go and find what they have done with this money.
Are you saying there's no record available, or no record that has been made available to you?
There was no evidence, because we have been part and parcel of this. We've been, part of the international advocacy to get these funds or this asset returned to Nigeria. We've been in the United States, we've been in the European Parliament, we've been in the British government, British Parliament, all canvassing for the return of Nigerian assets. So we are very much aware of all the processes. In 2017, December precisely, American government organized a conference which they call Global Forum for Assets Recovery. It was organized by British government and American government. I was part of that meeting, and certain principles were agreed on how recovered money should be utilized. And Nigeria has been violating those principles, Therefore, it is not surprising that even the latest recovery from which Muhammadu Buhari government has been doing, misplacement of priority for its utilization is there to see.
Yeah, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the impression that we got was that the people who were returning the funds, the international people, the Western countries, had made agreements with Nigeria and appointed dozens of civil society groups like your own to monitor every step of the way what happens to those monies?
Well, it was part of the principle of GIFA that non-state actors like civil society and other non-governmental, other non-state actors who understand and who knows this issue should be involved. But the involvement that we've seen from our own government is not what is being expected of. We need proper inclusion on civil society, not just to invite somebody or to pick one person and think that you have done everything. And then, so what we are talking about is that, look, there must be a framework on how to manage this recovered asset. For example, police are recovering, DSS are recovering, ICPC is recovering, EFCC is recovering, NLD is recovering, Custom is recovering, all of them are recovering, and there's no statistic of any central data where this asset, whether local or international.
Yes, I understand what you mean. That's a broader context. And I think you're perfectly right, because there ought to be a way that, I mean, this is a country that's supposed to have institutions that monitor things and keep track of things. I mean, it is the country's wealth, it's the country's money. But specifically about the Abacha money, because I've heard some civil society groups saying that they are part of a monitoring group, and that the money, since after the Obasanjo period, or at least after the first tranche of money that arrived, that the monitoring has been above board subsequently.
Okay, what has happened was that there was condition, or rather understanding, between the Swiss government and the United States on how best to utilize this money. And part of the agreement was that there would be transfer to the benefit, conditional cash transfer to the benefit. But what has happened in that process was that, yes, it is true, some people benefited from that, but corruption also entered there. For example, if you get a lot of 10,000, somebody will go back and collect 3,000 or 4,000 from that money. So, yes, even though there was wrongdoing in that, but at least some people benefited from that. But that is just a fraction of the asset we are talking about. You know, we are talking about a lot of assets locally and internationally.
Yes.
In part, the local asset recovered is more than even the international asset recovered. Where are they? You remember, part of the reason why government accused Magu was because they say he was not able to,
who was the former head of the
they say that he was not able
to
account for those assets.
Right
now, the Ministry of Justice is also in this scandal, because a lot of assets, EFCC is interrogating many officials of the Ministry of Justice. So you cannot recover from this looter and then another set of looters loot. And this is because the country refuses to have enabling legal framework on how to manage the assets recovery. Even though we have advocated for the passage of POCA, what, if implemented, will help to minimize the risks of diversion of this asset. But I must also say that while civil society were monitoring that cash transfer, but what is more important that civil society had been pushing was that, look, why can't you make use of this money to like area where you have serious deficit in it, like education, healthcare, and provision of water in our communities, rather than giving 5,000 naira to people.
So do you find that this fundamentally contradicts what one of the campaign promises and part of the manifesto of President Buhari, which was to fight corruption? In other words, that all these loose ends are just too loose.
So you can see the situation, speak for itself. You have a government that wants to fight corruption. You are able to get assets recovered locally and internationally, and you cannot explain what you have done with the asset. And that is why EFCC is actually checkmating, or rather interrogating some people who they believe have diverted this asset.
But
when they are recovered.
That's part of fighting corruption, though, isn't it?
Because we are voting, we are talking. You know,
and
look,
therefore you're forcing their hand.
Yeah, I got, for example, I went to European Parliament to argue why Nigerian asset must be returned. I was even invited by the French Parliament to help them even with framework on how they can repatriate African asset. I went to State Department, in about 3 occasions, arguing that our asset must be come back. Yes, in the United States, and the same in Britain. So we are part and parcel because we are passionate about our country. Some people have destroyed the country by stealing this asset, and we have to combat this asset come back. And the only condition we are giving is that this money should not be reluted, or this asset must not be reluted. That's the only thing civil society are talking about. But sometimes government has their own priority, which is different from what the general public want. For example, in our own sincere opinion, the management of the asset recovered in Nigeria has not been done in a transparent way and in a manner that can even help the victims of corruption in the first place.
But this time around, though, they have said that this $23 million, which is a very small amount of money compared to the other amounts of money that you talked about, I mean, they've said that it's going to be used towards the Second Niger Bridge. It's going to be used towards building the, I think, Abuja-Kano Road. There's another one, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and so on. Do you think that is a good way to spend the money? Because we also heard a member of parliament in Abuja, National Assembly, saying that he thinks that the money should be put towards ASU, for example, the academic staff of the state universities who've been on strike and who've been calling for the agreements, their compensatory agreements, to be honored. I mean, is that something that you think perhaps the money should be used for?
Actually, National Assembly invited us to come and speak about this asset, recovery thing, and we were there. We presented, perspective to them, and it was very clear that there is a serious gap in what government is doing with management of the asset recovered in Nigeria and its utilization. So ideally, this capital project that they want to do, even the money cannot go anywhere. If you look at the content of the amount
the size
required for the project, this money will disappear. You understand? While we acknowledge the fact that the capital projects are important, but on this specific thing, because you are likely going to be doing duplication, sometimes when you look at the budget, you see provision are made for those kind of construction, and then you now want to use this money again, which in some instances there's no appropriation. That's the reason why National Assembly is concerned that you are recovering this money, and this money is not even made really known, and it is not part of the overall budget that you are sending. So in order to make it
so basically it's extra budget,
exactly,
which makes it more difficult to account
for. So many of us are canvassing that let us have a central port where you know that you have recovered this money and you can channel it to the budget, to the appropriation, so that if the priority is to do the Second Niger Delta and the Kaduna Road and wherever you think you have, based on the facts available, you can do that. But for us, we believe that education in Nigeria has been suffering. You should inject money so that the country education can be recovered. As it is now, ASU has been making legitimate call and demands that you cannot have a university that has no library, that has no laboratory, that has no research, that cannot do anything. We cannot be producing empty students.
And this $23 million could go a long way.
This money, it can go a long way.
Those universities.
So if, for example, government, if not that some people just want to also, allegedly benefit from this, which is not allowed under this principle of JIPA, they would have nothing wrong with them to say, okay, we have these problems in the educational sector. Let us, utilize the money where that really people can benefit. But sharing this money, I don't think it is the solution.
Well, Rafsanjani, I want to say that what you do is very impressive, and the way that you monitor these things, and please keep doing that. Auwal Musa Rafsanjani, Executive Director of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, or CISLAC.